Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Environmental Answers Podcast. I'm your host, Tiana Alame. Today, we are lucky to be talking about the position of power, specifically around renewable energy adoption. I am lucky to be here with the Abigail Hopper. Abby, how are you doing today? I would love to hear how things are going. And then, for those who don't know you, would you mind doing a brief introduction?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm really, really honored to be here, Tiana, and I appreciate the invitation. Um, so I'm Abby Hopper. For the last 9 years, served as the president and CEO of the Solar Energy Industries Association. So that's the national trade association for the solar and storage industry. And we had, as you know, kind of a presence in the federal level across many, many states, in the regulatory realm, on the congressional side, state houses. We did standards, we did workforce, we did obviously comms, research, events. I know a lot about events. And I am a lawyer by training and have positions in, I work directly for a governor as his energy advisor. And then I ran the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management for President Obama, which does all offshore energy development and regulation. So and all of that, I stepped away from all of it at the end of January of this year. So not quite 6 months ago, I realized that it was time for me to just take a breath. And so that's what I'm doing now is I'm breathing a little bit more easily. And I'm actually like thinking a lot about what do I want this next chapter of my life to look like? Where do I want to have the most impact? Where do I want to create and build and influence power? So it's a timely conversation for me to have personally. And I appreciate the invitation to do it with you.
Yeah, of course. When I was thinking about the name of this particular episode, I thought a position of power, one, because you've held many positions of power, but also like the state of energy in the country is something that the students that will most likely be listening to this episode and just general listeners are tuning in to understand where is energy here in the United States? What does that actually mean? And I think that that's a good definition maybe to even start with. Like, what is it when we talk about energy that we're actually talking about? And we're looking at power. Could you explain that to someone who may not really understand what we mean by energy?
Yeah. So, the best way I can describe kind of power and energy in that context is it's really the basis upon which our entire lives have come to rely and our economy has come to rely. So it's how do we power our transportation systems? How do we power our homes? How do we power our businesses? How do we keep the lights on? How do we keep the air cool or the houses warm? Right? How do we keep the water clean? How do we keep the data centers running? Obviously, how do we keep airports moving? I mean, power is also like the fuel in the jets. So it is embedded in literally every element of our lives. That it is, I think it represents somewhere between 4 and 6% of the United States GDP. It is sort of upon which everything else is based, right? If you took that part away, life as we know it would not exist for us. So, I was with some students last night, actually from my alma mater, and one of them he's here in Washington as an intern this summer in the energy space. And he said, I've never really thought about energy before. Like, what do you think about this as a career? And I was like, listen, it's never going away, right? It's never going away. So, in terms of like things that come and go, it's never going away. And so I really think that's an important thing for especially younger people to think about as they're considering where they want to spend their time and energy.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, it is the basis of which we live on. We need it for the lights. We need it for everything. Energies in every field. Last year, I had the opportunity to do an episode where we were talking about like what is energy, and that was like a key thing. It's like it's everywhere. Like it's not something that we can just live without, especially in the modern times. As a follow-up, I was thinking about why is renewable energy something important for us to consider? If someone was like, if we already are functioning right now with energy as a baseline, why is it important for us to consider renewable energy adoption?
Yeah. Well, I would say so I was not a science or STEM major in college. I was a history major. And so I would say, let's look backwards for a moment and sort of acknowledge that as a people, we have always continued to evolve our energy sources, right? Like we have gone from simply burning firewood to there's a great museum in New Bedford, Massachusetts, about whales, and we used to burn whale oil or blubber whale oil for energy, right? And then we dug coal and we've burned coal and we figure out how to like get access natural gas that's buried deep in the ground, and we burn that. And so like it is sort of part of our evolution as a humanity that we continue to look for new resources and utilize new resources. And there are environmental consequences to some of the choices we've made about our energy uses in the past. So thinking specifically about electricity, some of the fossil fuel sources of electricity, coal and natural gas in particular, have really severe health implications for us as a people. As we have cited them in places that are more, where people didn't have as much power to push back. And so Black and Brown communities are disproportionately impacted with poor health and poor health results because of fossil fuel and the pollution from fossil fuel. So that's one reason to sort of expand our portfolio of resources, including clean energy that doesn't give off carbon pollution. But also, all the other ways in which some of our choices of the past are impacting our future. I'm sitting here, I'm looking out the window at Washington, D.C., and you're in North Carolina. It is hot.
It is hot.
It's hot. And this is, I learned heat dome as a phrase this summer. I didn't know that. I knew heat wave. I didn't know heat dome. But we're seeing those temperatures, right? We're seeing more severe weather. We're seeing hurricanes and blizzards and droughts and fires. So it's having an impact on our daily lives. And so again, the scientific linkage has been proven that these things have an impact. So of course, as a people, we should be looking for sources of electricity and energy. Energy and power is a broader topic than just electricity, that are more in line with the way that we live our lives, right? And will hopefully help things heal from some of the damage that we've done.
No, that makes sense. And I appreciate that. Like as an incentive, one of our goals at the Environmental Answers podcast is to remove the fear of climate change. So looking at it as an opportunity and letting people know that these things are around us, but we can adopt. So we're not powerless, since we're talking about power.
No.
We have the ability to be innovative, think of new ideas, solutions, and a pathway in order to move us forward to be in a position of power. And so when I'm thinking about all of what you're sharing, I'm really grateful. Also, heat dome, just for clarification, it's like an area that has heat and maybe the other areas near it may not have it. Is that what a heat dome is? I just want to make sure I'm in alignment with there.
I think so.
Okay.
All I know is it was so hot, I could barely breathe. And I live, I have full air conditioning and a very, comfortable place. And so I just think about people who have to work in that heat, who are unhoused, right? Who are traveling in transportation systems that aren't well ventilated. It is like there are so many significant health impacts to high heat in ways that we just didn't, we hadn't experienced so far. So we really don't have data about how impactful it is.
Yeah, I know. I recently was on a trip to Europe, which I was like super excited about. I know I went to Denmark, but one of the things that happened was that we got stuck at the Paris airport. And when I say it was hot in that airport, I can't remember which one. I know there's more than one, but is it C?
You're probably at Charles de Gaulle.
Yeah, like that airport, I was dying of heat. And I was just sitting there like, oh my goodness, like,
right.
We have energy that we need, renewable energy sources, but also I'm very interested in design. Like, how can we design these spaces better for just airflow? I mean, a lot of Europe has that in mind with the windows and stuff like that, but that's not enough. It's not enough. It's so hot.
No, it's so hot.
But yeah, that was just a sidebar. The next question that I had was centered more so about barriers when it comes to renewable energy adoption. Based on your position and positions previously, I'm sure you have seen several barriers when it comes to renewable energy adoption. One of the goals in our ET 262 class at NC State is to break that apart so that students can understand what that means, but also understanding what they can do about it. So if there was one barrier that we could talk about briefly or break apart that maybe we could do something about, would there be one that you could share with us today?
I think, one barrier is misunderstanding about kind of the opportunities and the impacts of renewable energy. In particular, you're in North Carolina, and so sometimes there is this, in my opinion, like a false dichotomy that is created between, okay, we can have clean energy or we can have farmland, but we can't do both, right? And we're going to take too much farmland if we put solar panels and deploy solar panels at the scale that we need to deploy them at. And there's been lots of research, SEIA, where we both know, just recently put out a report about the amount of farmland that's needed to build the amount of solar that we need. And it's like such a tiny percentage compared to golf courses, right? And parking lots and compared to malls. And so when you see it from that perspective, you're like, oh, there's some facts out there and then there's some misinformation. So my experience has been that most of the barriers are, I say little p political, right? Like there are, it is a problem of understanding or misinformation or, different people's profit motives. It's not really a technology. We don't really have a technology issue. We certainly at the moment don't have a finance issue. There's tons of money to go around and to fund these projects. It really is very local and on the ground. And so as I think about sort of a way to address that and kind of break that apart and take some power over the misinformation, it really is kind of getting very local and having conversations with people at the local level about what they're concerned about and bringing them, sort of neighbor to neighbor or trusted voice, like a university to trusted voice about what those facts are.
No, that's really, really helpful and very clear. I know that one of the projects that we're working on in Environmental Answers is like a search tool that's primarily developed on hyperlocal information because, we've saw the evolution of information. Now we have information from everywhere, but to actually address our problem right here and now, we need like really specialized spaces and information that's really hyperlocal. And you get that through those conversations that you're having, talking to the people, understanding what their needs are and why that matters.
Yes.
Shifting a little bit from barriers to, I know we talked about one of the incentives earlier of being that we could potentially have cooler spaces. But as you're thinking about that barrier, is there an incentive? I know you said something that was a little bit news to me, that there's money flowing around. I'm like, okay, how do we get that money flowing into the directions that we need? But like, what are the incentives to renewable energy adoption that you see that are accessible?
Yeah. So, one thing I'm sure that you talk with your students about is sort of the patchwork way in which the United States does energy policy. And so at the federal level, there are incentives, but they're rapidly going away, as we know, because of the actions last summer in terms of this Congress and this president. So those incentives for solar, for wind are going away. But for storage, which is like a critical technology in this whole energy transition, they're not going away. So that's something that if I were starting my career today and sort of looking at the technology choices, I would center storage in the middle of it and kind of go from there. There's also incentives at the local level, state, and sometimes even more local than that, but often at the state level, either tax incentives or some other kind of way to incent businesses and citizens. But there's also just a lot of private capital flowing in this marketplace, right? Like people understand that there's increased demand. Data centers are growing quickly and they need to have power. And so they're willing, capital's willing to be expended to build that power. And so as I think about kind of the health of the industry, the industry is healthy. It, despite some of the big P political challenges we have, the industry is really healthy because the demand is so strong. And kind of my sense and my thesis is that the market will outperform the politics all day long. And so, yeah,
because we need energy. We need energy. We need energy and power. That's what we live on, like you said earlier. Yes. So it's like this is a part of our progress and prosperity as a people. So we got to continue we
Yeah.
develop our
I
energy.
mean, I mean, if you look at look back at history, look around at what's happening now, people go to war over power. Power, fuel. They go to war over fuel. They go to war over electricity. They go to war over oil. They go to war over access to all of that. And so it is not shocking that it is, power is such a powerful thing, but also that it is so foundational. And that's part of what I love about it, especially like thinking about your students. There's no aspect of our lives, as we said at the beginning, that this doesn't touch. And so, if you're interested in foreign relations, if you're interested in national security, if you're interested in the military, if you're interested in kind of sustainability and the circular economy, like if you're interested in honestly, like things like art and telling the story of people who are climate refugees, or there's just so many ways to kind of embrace the different threads that are electricity and power and energy. Obviously, I'm a tad bit biased, but but it's pretty amazing.
I might be a little bit too, seeing the value of it. I know for me, my background, I started my undergraduate experience was environmental science. And so
Uh-huh.
marine science was my concentration. And then
Nice.
sometimes they're like, how did you get all the way here? It's like, because there's the opportunity for us to have like that lasting impact change. It's like where it's
Mhm.
very clear and the need is real.
It
Sometimes
is
we
so
can,
real.
it's a very real need. So that's how I got
Mhm.
from there to here. But
I love it.
yeah.
I
Um,
love it.
so as we move forward, when it comes to renewable energy, I know that you talked to us briefly about the importance of understanding storage and like
Mhm.
what that looks like as a part of maybe like a career path. But if someone is not familiar with what you mean by storage, could you
Mhm.
describe that a little bit more for us?
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things, let me talk about electricity first. So for most of our humanity, um, you had to generate electricity at the exact moment you needed it, right? So if you wanted the house to be warm, you had to like put the logs in the fireplace and light them, and then that heat kept you warm. If you want to keep, I'm in an office building, if you want to keep the air conditioner on a 101-degree day, there has to be a power plant somewhere generating electricity right now and coming across the transmission lines and getting it here right now to keep this place cool. Storage allows a disconnect between when the electricity is generated and when it is needed. So it's basically a big old battery, and it is kind of it's 2-hour storage, 4-hour storage. So there are different lengths of time that you can hold the storage. You can hold the electricity or the electrons. Um, and that's pretty transformational, right? Because like it's sort of, you know, like I have my iPhone and so I charge it and then I can walk around all day and not have it be plugged into the wall. Right. It's just kind of a similar idea. So it is transformational in that way that it really breaks the way that we think about when electricity has to be stored and where it has to be generated and where. So, and there's lots of ways into it. Not everybody is a technologist. I am not. I told you I'm a history major. So there's certainly all of the kind of science behind different technologies, and there's pumped pumped water that creates energy when it is released, and there's lithium ion, and there's sodium, and there's all kinds of stuff that I don't even know what they're all about. So there's that avenue into storage, but there's also kind of the business development avenue, kind of what are the use cases. You can imagine a scenario where I don't know, what kind of grocery stores do you have near where you live?
North Carolina, we have Publix is a popular one,
Oh
Lidl.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
the public subs.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So like, Publix right now, I am guessing they have a backup generation system, because if the power goes out at Publix, can you imagine how much money one grocery store would lose if all
Yeah,
the refrigeration
at
went out,
Publix,
right?
yes, for sure.
It would be a significant impact on their bottom line. So my guess is they probably have always had diesel generators, right? So the power goes out, diesel generator goes on. We all know that hum. It's really, really
Wow.
bad for our environment. And now we can put storage on the roof of the Publix. I mean, sorry, solar on the roof of the Publix, and then the battery in the parking lot. And power goes out, and you're just a one store show, right? You get decoupled from the grid, and you're just operating off the grid for a while until the power gets restored. And so that is a totally different business model. And so there's lots of ways into centering storage and the heart of your career, but it is absolutely like one of the technologies that's growing fast.
No, that's awesome. I appreciate you painting that picture. It did spark another question for me, just processing that element of being able to store and then temporarily not be reliant on our traditional power providers. And
Mm-hmm.
so, like, understanding, I guess, that as maybe either a barrier for some adoption of storage. Could it be that maybe there is some energy around that, positive, negative energy around the concept of being able to decouple or come away from the grid? Do you get it?
Yeah,
We could talk a little
yeah,
bit about that,
yeah.
especially with the students. This is more of like a policy focused course, so
Uh-huh.
being able to dive into that would be helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it is, as you can imagine, a very sensitive question around sort of the ability to disconnect from the grid. And it's one thing if you do it at your house or I do it at my house. If enough of us do it, it's impactful. But
Mhm.
it's where we really see it playing out in real time is on the data centers. So data centers are getting built all across the country. They're getting built really quickly. They have huge, huge power needs. And utilities just aren't able to get through all of the regulatory processes to kind of like, you imagine, like hook them up, plug them into the grid.
Mhm.
And so they're starting to be built off grid. So they're being built like sort of as their own little universe, right? They build the building, they build the power plant that fuels themselves, and they never have to connect to the grid. Um, that is not great for the grid, right?
Mhm.
Because it's not great for the utilities business model, because that's a huge customer that they're now not able to interact with because they had to go around the process. And so it is a very, very, very live conversation. So as you're talking about policy, right, it's happening at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, sort of how do we deal with these large load customers? It's happening at states. We're seeing it like playing out in politics in terms of governor's races. Governor Hochul just recently issued a statewide ban of data centers for a year while they figure out how to pay for them, regulate them, like mitigate the environmental impact, think about job impact. So it is like everything's moving so fast.
I mean, and I would say that that is also one of the perks of being in the energy industry and space is that it's
Yeah.
moving, it's engaging, it's something you can be a part of. It's real, it's right now, and so
Hmm.
there's a lot of opportunity for engagement and ideas.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
so
So much.
shifting it a little bit to this next stage, when we
Hmm.
were also titling this episode, I was thinking about your position of power and then what you get to do with that position of power and what that's looking at you for you in this stage.
Yeah.
Would you like to catch us up a little bit about what you're working on now?
Yeah. Sure. Thank you. First of all, I very much recognize that a lot of my power I was just born into, right? I'm like white, I have blonde hair, and I have blue eyes, right? And I'm highly educated. So I have I possess a level of power and ease maneuvering this world that we live in that I recognize not everyone does. So some of that power I didn't earn. Some of it I did, right? And I feel like worked really hard and spent a lot of time and energy kind of building relationships and building credibility and building reputation, being a person of my word, right? I live and breathe in Washington, D.C. And so your professional reputation is critical, especially when people hear, oh, you do lobbying, like they just assume I'm a liar and a cheat and treat people like terrible. And I don't think any of that is true. So that part of the power I feel like I've earned, right? That reputation. And it took a lot to step away from a role that imbued me with a lot of power, and say, you know what, I'm gonna sort of take a breath and figure out what's next. And so as I think about what's next for me, it is, um, I have realized in these last few months, like I love building. I love building things. I love building movements. I love building teams. I love building a vision and then a strategy and then a plan to get there. So I am giving myself some time to figure out like what I'm going to build, but it's going to be some combination of clean energy because I love it and I believe in it and our country and our world needs it. It is going to absolutely be about lifting up voices that don't necessarily have the same kind of opportunities I do. One of those is around Solar Sisters. So, just women coming together in clean energy. It's a great name, but it's a little too narrow. So anyway, Solar Sisters, and particularly centering service in Solar Sisters. So it's not just about like, what am I getting out of this, but how are we giving back to the communities? And then the last piece is really like, I'm very fascinated by different leadership styles, and in particular, like elements of leadership that seem, I don't know what the right words are, like more gendered or more feminine or more masculine. Like I don't want to make huge sweeping generalizations, but there is also some, like a lot of research behind it, right? That like people have different skills and strengths and sometimes they align with their gender. And so I don't know exactly what I want to do about that, but it is like when I think about things that I could stay up all night, like thinking about and dreaming about, that those are the kinds of things that fall in it. So you caught me in a moment where I'm like, I don't know exactly.
No, I believe you 100% know. One thing about you is it's always inspiring. For those who don't already follow you on LinkedIn, they need to because the content is real and it connects to people. So it's always inspiring. I know for me, as someone who was also bent towards leadership development, and I totally was like, I didn't know you were on that wave too. I have so many things I want to talk to you about
So
later.
many
So because
yes.
it's so fundamental. And I think that it's critical for this next wave of energy adoption is really
Mhm.
being able to help people know what they need to do in order to lead change. I think that's
Yes.
the title of a book, and maybe a book we should read in a Solar Sisters Club is called Leading
Mm.
Change. I haven't read it. It's on my bookshelf. Someone gave it to me. But like
Oh, I love this.
about that based on what you said, that's what came to mind. So no, I appreciate that. One of the goals, at least with the courses that I teach, is also to inspire entrepreneurship as in a solution.
Mm-hmm.
Especially for environmental development, there are a lot of opportunities that haven't been tapped into it because someone hasn't taken the invitation. So
Yeah.
if folks have
Yeah.
listened to this much of our episode, I want to then invite them and then also invite them with your energy of like, you don't have to know, you just have to build, right? It's
Yeah.
incremental. Would you say
Yeah.
when you're building something that's very incremental? Is that true?
Totally. My like the advice I keep getting from my friends is just do one thing, right? Like you don't have to have the 5-year plan. Just like plan one event or write one article or, respond to like draft one proposal. Because that feels scary to me. Like I feel like I've been told I need to have a 5-year plan and all my financials, and I don't even know what those are.
Mhm.
But just do one thing. And you know what? I love entrepreneurship. I love entrepreneurship. And there are so many opportunities in this energy transition. Like you said, part of your goal is to sort of make it less scary. And I worked for a governor, and he would always talk about the opportunity that sort of adapting to this new world provides. And you and I have seen it. Like, I have seen people who I've known, and they're legitimately now billionaires because they like thought of a cool thing, and then they built a great team and a great strategy, and
They did it.
they did it
They didn't stop.
in like, yeah, it's wild. So
You can do
yeah.
it, it doesn't have to take forever and ever. Maybe like in the past is your point. There was this whole like
Yeah.
maybe you couldn't become a millionaire or billionaire in one generation, but we
Yeah.
have put that on the head during this duration of time. At least that's what I heard from what you
Yeah.
said. Like,
Yeah.
it's
I think that's true. I think that's totally true. And I think, one of the things I love, why I chose to come into solar and solar and storage as opposed to some other energy technologies was that it is insanely entrepreneurial.
okay.
There are startups and there's publicly traded companies and there's everything in between, and they're all competing, and it's
It's
so exciting.
wonderful. It's
Wonderful.
it's a fun ecosystem to be a part of. So
It
no,
really
yeah,
is.
I appreciate you holding space for that invitation. As we wrap up this episode of the Environmental Answers podcast, is there anything that maybe we didn't cover that you thought maybe like, hey, Tiana, I thought you were going to ask me about this. You know what I mean? Is there anything else that you want to share, whether that's related to barriers and incentives for renewable energy adoption, or like we just talked about, the entrepreneurial journey and what that looks like?
I actually think sort of more the latter. And that, the thing that I learned in my career that has been insanely helpful is to network relentlessly. And network relentlessly doesn't mean I gather, well, I don't think there's business cards anymore, but I don't just like gather a million connections on LinkedIn because those are kind of meaningless. But I actually spend time and energy in investing in relationships. And so when I think about networking relentlessly, it is meaningful relationships that are cultivated over time. And I don't feel like people talk about that enough. I mean, you and I are, I think, a great example of a meaningful relationship that's been cultivated over time, right? And you have put in the effort to do that. And hopefully you feel like I have too. But that's how these things happen. So I just would share that in my experience, that is, I've never once regretted spending time on building my network.
Yes. So if you've heard this today and you're listening to this and you haven't already started or created your LinkedIn profile, I recommend you do that. But don't just add people. Make sure that you're having a reason to build a relationship over time. I know for me, I did a fellowship with an organization that was associated with SEIA. And at that time, one of the things that stuck out for me, Abby, as you being a leader, was the fact that you wrote thank you notes to all the interns. And I read my note and it meant a lot to me to get one because sometimes you can do internships and you might just feel like, oh, I don't really matter. But taking the time to do that was an example of you doing that investment. It didn't matter that, in my mind, I'm like, I'm down the totem pole somewhere. This long is an opportunity. You're growing. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
Everyone has value no matter where you are on the scale, if you believe in the scale or the hierarchy. Everyone everyone
Right.
has value no matter what. Even zero has a place to hold. So therefore,
Amen.
well, I just want to say thank you again for coming on the Environmental Answers podcast. We really appreciate you. If folks want to stay connected and follow up with either what you're doing, what's the best place?
The best place is honestly on LinkedIn. I'm on there every single day, and I read and respond to pretty much every message I get on there. So feel free to reach out.
Oh, awesome. All right. Well, thank you again. And
Thank
look
you.
forward to the next episode of the Environmental Answers podcast coming to you soon. All right. Bye.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tiana.
Thank you.